If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by our in-house CIA operative, Jeff MD, my co-host, John Wheaton, on the road, laying down miles, and our in-house Intel subject matter expert, S2. So we have some breaking news from earlier today with regards to Gunther Eagleman being swatted. He's a big-time conservative call it influencer on X, and a former cop from California, and his brother is as well. They live in Texas now. But S2, go ahead and describe this gong show.
Yeah, there's been some cases of swatting going on again. Gunther Eagleman's house was swatted. I think it was last night, I think it was, and somebody called the police in about a fake hostage situation in his house. Fortunately, his family's okay and his kids are okay. And he had good relationship with law enforcement locally there. So they're actually going to be adding some extra patrols to his in and around his area for the time being.
I think this is the second time, because it happened again today.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff's only a few hours old, but I think this is the second time inside the past few days that they've hit him. But there's his message right there from Samuel L. Jackson. And he said to whoever did this, you effed around, now it's time to find out. So pretty dangerous stuff. Does anybody want to speak to that? Because the goal here is basically to have somebody killed by a SWAT team. It's murder by proxy. Go ahead, Jeff.
We just need to figure this out. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene was swatted like 3 times in a row, and they still send a full tactical team after her house. You know, after the second time, you might want to pick up the phone and call the house and say, hey, we got a report, because, she'll go, no, nothing's going on. They tend to overreact on a lot of these things. And with as much as this has been going on, as prevalent as it is now, you got to use a little common sense here.
Oh, it looks like Nick Sortor was the first one that it happened to. Then it happened to Gunther.
Correct.
It's happened to Tim Pool like 5 times.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yep. Like
I saw some other news on Tim today. Pardon me. I don't know if you caught it, but he bought property in some town in West Virginia, and a bunch of people were protesting it. He wanted to turn it into a skate park, and the property is now useless between being vandalized, trash thrown all over it. It's just a total waste. So he's thinking of just giving it to the city because of the hooligans. Anyway, all right. So let's get right into the top news stories from today before we get into our headline story, which is the censorship-industrial complex. So I'll go through these relatively quickly. If any of y'all want to add something to it, just interrupt me. So I've got 7 today, and it's kind of a mix of AI plus my take on things. I took a bunch of the stuff that AI spewed out today because I felt it was repetitive to stuff we've already covered. So number 1, search for missing American student in Dominican Republic. Authorities are intensifying efforts to find Dudiksha Konaki, a 20-year-old American college student who vanished nearly a week ago from a beach resort in the Dominican Republic on March the 6th. The case has drawn international attention as the search expands, highlighting concerns for American tourists abroad. Number 2, SpaceX Crew 10 launch delay, So NASA's SpaceX Crew 10 mission to the International Space Station was scrubbed yesterday, less than an hour before liftoff. The delay affects the replacement of astronauts Barry Wilmore and Sunita Williams, stranded on the International Space Station for over 9 months, prompting emotional reactions online, including a resurfaced video from Wilmore's daughter expressing frustration over the situation. Does anybody want to weigh in on that from the perspective that they asked the Biden admin to get involved, and they basically thumbed their nose at them and said, we're not going to help get you back to Earth.
Well, NASA's been too busy with their DEI initiative that they've been trying to build under the covers here lately. It's just been exposed. So,
Well, and if it was anyone other than Elon rescuing them, they'd probably let him. But they didn't want Elon to look like the hero. So they're letting these poor schlubs sit up there for months.
I saw a bunch of people taking that same opinion leading up to this. Of course, this isn't new. They've been stranded up there for months and months.
And he offered to get them out in December. In December.
Mm-hmm. All right. Number 3, TikTok ban deadline looms. With an April 5th deadline approaching, speculation grows about whether President Donald Trump will extend a reprieve on the TikTok ban he delayed via executive order. No concrete action has been taken to reverse the ban, fueling debates over national security, free speech, and Trump's next move on the popular app. Do y'all want to add anything to that?
what do you bet that was what Zuckerberg's meeting with him was about?
To buy TikTok?
Yep.
Yeah. So talk about the communists taking out the communists, right?
Yeah.
So there were rumors floating around a few months back when they first did the delay that somebody that was connected to the Oracle was interested in buying it.
Larry Ellison.
Yeah.
Ellison.
Do we know where that's at?
All I heard was the same as you. He was interested, but didn't go past that.
I will tell you this about is that when it comes to censorship, I can't post a video on our TikTok, which we have a TikTok. I don't do much posting on it because everything that I post gets flagged, and then I have to appeal it, and it always gets approved on the appeal, but it gets banned, and so it kills it in the algorithm. So we never get any views, that's the purpose of that censorship.
Well, appreciate that update, because I'm not a TikTok user. And of course, the topic at hand tonight is the censorship industrial complex. And Elon put a pretty big dent in it by allowing content on X leading up to the election. But there's still a ton of woke code out there under the hood on X and other platforms. And Mark Zuckerberg's full of shit. So,
Yep, 100%.
All right, number 4, Congress faces government shutdown deadline. A midnight deadline on March 14th looms as Senate Democrats hesitate to support a Republican stopgap spending measure. The impasse threatens a government shutdown, with political brinkmanship dominating headlines as lawmakers scramble to avoid disruption. So we've covered this. This is all political theater.
Well,
Jeff, do you want to say anything more before we move on?
having lived through several government shutdowns in my career, things will still get done. The average American citizen won't notice. It is theater.
You'll still get your Social Security check.
Social Security will still come. Your retirement checks will still come. Whatever that. I don't even know if the post office shuts down because it's a quasi government corporation now.
Right.
If you call Department of Agriculture to complain about the price of eggs, you'll probably get a message on the phone instead of somebody answering it. That's about it.
So I caught a short update before we jumped on here tonight that it sounded like Schumer might fold and go ahead and get this passed because their polling showing it's not reflecting well on the Democrats at all. And somebody has put together a few montages of Democrats in the past. The sky's falling. We can't shut the government down. But now all of a sudden they're taking the opposite tactic because Trump's in office.
Did they get the one with Elizabeth Warren in it?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I personally hope the Democrats dig their heels in and shut the government down. It would be the final nail in the coffin to them, because it would be completely around their necks when they're not in power. It would be hilarious. Government shutdowns always get blamed on the party that's responsible for them, whether they were benevolent or not.
And before we went live, before you jumped on, John, both Jeff and S2 said this is just going to support the Doge initiative even more, because when people's lives don't change, they'll be like, well, I think they're right. We don't need those extra people.
I think they also realize that in a government shutdown, the executive branch actually picks who is essential and not essential.
Yep.
Right.
So Trump is literally in control of who can work and who not,
Yeah.
which is a huge thing. And I think if the Democrats realize that, which they probably did, they're like, oh, we can't give him that because then he just exposes more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. News item 5 of 7. RFK Jr. pushes food safety regulations. Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. met with food industry executives to discuss stricter regulations on additives under the Make America Healthy Again agenda. A poll showing 58% public support underscores the growing concerns over chemicals in the food supply. So we won't go too deep into this. We've touched on this multiple times, but there are all kinds of things in our food that are outlawed in most other countries. And many of these things, like the red dye number 5 that they got rid of just before RFK Jr. came in, is carcinogenic. They know it's carcinogenic, but they still kept putting it into foods. Does any of you want to add anything to RFK Jr.'s initiative here, Maha?
There was another small win that occurred somewhere along these lines, in that I believe it was sodas and something else were not going to be allowed to be purchased using food stamps anymore.
Interesting.
That fell under the USDA.
Very interesting. I saw that was being proposed. I didn't know it went through.
I saw an article that a liberal friend of my wife's posted earlier from Politico about how the USDA was cutting kids' lunch money and all of this stuff for funding and stuff. Not at all true. It's completely debunked, because all of that was for climate initiatives. And what RFK is actually looking at is actually doing improving the quality of food that we give our kids. Yeah. And they've actually allocated like $500 million to this project apparently now. So it's all smoke and mirrors, and the media is trying to paint this as we're letting kids starve, and it's not at all true. It's all a part of this trying to actually give kids quality food at school instead of the garbage that they eat now.
100%.
Going backwards, there's Roddy Mom 13 just put an update in the chat over here. Schumer caved. We have the votes.
Yeah, there you go. I saw a headline that he was going to do that maybe 30 minutes ago, but that's good.
Well, the beauty of that is they can now cut stuff during the reconciliation process, and then it can pass it with only 50 votes or 51 votes.
Yep. True story. All right. Number 6 of 7, ICC takes Philippines Duterte into custody. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte was taken into custody by the International Criminal Court on March 12th to face charges of crimes against humanity tied to his drug war killings. The high-profile case resonates in the U.S. due to its implications for international law and human rights. Jeff, I want to get you to weigh in on this, just because it's international and it's probably something in the wheelhouse.
Duterte, I think this is, in a way, the way this impacts us and Trump is Duterte said, okay, we've got a huge problem with drug gangs. And he basically told the anti-narcotics police and military in the Philippines to go weapons free on their ass. And if, tried to arrest them, if they fought back, they just shot them. Kind of goes outside the rule of law as far as the West is concerned, but it was effective. And what I'm afraid what they're doing is trying to set a precedence so that if Trump starts eliminating cartels in Mexico, they can go, well, we want to put Trump on trial. We did it to Duterte. He should be held to the same standard.
Didn't Mexico just release 29 cartel drug kingpins to us?
Yeah, but it's the ones that they don't have in custody that we need to worry about.
Right.
True.
Of course. All right. And the 7th and final news item is Trump's tax cut proposal gains traction. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick announced Trump's plan to eliminate taxes for those earning under $150,000 annually, a policy receiving enthusiastic support from Republicans on social media. The proposal is shaping economic policy debates ahead of further legislative action. Anybody want to weigh in on that?
So, clarify that. Is that $150,000 per person? So $300,000 per couple, or is it?
That's a good question. I can't answer that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to look into that, because what he's essentially doing is that anybody that makes less than 150,000, that's like the bottom 20% of the tax that's taken. People don't realize that 80% of taxes are from the top 10%, 15% of the country, and that's 80% of the taxes. So it's not really going to affect us that much if he does that, but it will affect him big time in the lower income earners in this country's life outlook. So
Well, I think it's going to have a big effect on the younger generations who are struggling to buy homes.
yep.
It's with the inflation the way it's gone, real estate prices the way they've gone. It's hard for kids to buy their first home right now. They have to save up for a down payment, pay all their regular bills, and then get through the underwriting process. And I know because Cindy's oldest son is going through it right now, and he's supposed to close tomorrow, and it has been a mission. And he's 32 years old. So I think this 150,000 thing will help people to afford it.
For sure. Definitely.
All right. So let's jump into the headline topic tonight, which is the censorship-industrial complex. So that's a phrase that's emerged basically to describe all of these powerful players at the table. So it's big tech, it's government, so Big Brother, legacy media, NGOs and fact checkers, and corporate interests. So just going back through that list quickly, big tech would be platforms primarily like Google, Meta, so Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube. They all use algorithms that ban people, suppress people. They call it moderation. And they also push certain narratives, or they suppress certain narratives. And we've seen this, just explode over the past 4 years. Things are a little bit better, but it's far from being fixed. Governments would be obviously agencies as well as lawmakers partnering up with tech firms to censor content, to basically say, we don't want this narrative to gain traction amongst the populace. And then tech is in cahoots with Big Brother. They've had access to the back end of every social media platform since January 2021. And the only one that's made legitimate changes to freedom of speech is X. The other ones have paid lip service to it, but it has not happened there. And even on X, we've mentioned this multiple times. I've mentioned it multiple times. If you say the wrong word like retard or a fag and a retard, you get suppressed. You might get shut down for a week. And it's all automatic. It's not something that a human being's even intervening in. Legacy media, of course, all the major networks, and their job is just to amplify the acceptable stories and either ignore or debunk anything else that doesn't jive with the narrative that they've been told to promote. So we know that you've got 6 companies now control over 95% of legacy media in America. And we've discussed this from an astroturfing perspective, from a PSYOP perspective. When you see government officials, and it happened this week, all repeating the same thing verbatim, and this was regards to the shutdown, the potential shutdown of government, and you also see the same verbatim vernacular used by legacy media, that's your first hint that this is a PSYOP. It is a concerted effort to make you think a particular narrative, and it should send you on a mission to find out what the truth really is behind it, because it's not what they're telling you. NGOs and fact checkers. So this is an interesting one. At the height, Facebook had 44,000 individuals who did nothing but scour Facebook looking for anything that disagreed with the vaccines, anybody who said the 2020 election was stolen, that Trump was good, anybody who questioned J6 and, said it wasn't an insurrection, and you can't have an insurrection, without guns and violence and a takeover. Anybody who said anything along the lines of no police officers were killed during J6, those are all true, but they suppressed the shit out of that. So Zuckerberg has reportedly reduced the 44,000, but he didn't get rid of them, number one. And number two, all the code under the hood is the same as it was before, just like it is on X. We were in the middle of a stream 2 weeks ago, I had this warning message pop up in StreamYard, said, Facebook has cut your feed. So after we were done, I went and had a look at it, and it said that we had violated their community guidelines with regards to violence. There was not a single violent topic covered in that podcast, nothing whatsoever. So I had to file an appeal, just like John mentioned earlier. And lo and behold, we got turned back on. And of course, the last one will be corporate interests as far as these groups. So these are advertisers and donors. They basically say, hey, if you don't go along with our narrative, we're going to pull our funding for you. So Legacy Media, for example, 75% of their ad revenue comes from big pharma. Except presidential election years, it drops to about 50% because of all the political advertising. It's not because big pharma wants you to go to your primary and say, hey, I want to try Ozempic. It's because they can tell Legacy Media what the narratives are that they want them to amplify. And if they don't amplify it, they're like, okay, well, we're going to pull our ad spend from your network and we'll just keep working with the other people, which would completely crush them. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens because RFK Jr. is going after that. And he wants to make it illegal for big pharma to advertise on legacy and mainstream media. So is there anything y'all want to add just to those the players before we get into more specifics?
Let's not forget Telegram. Telegram has been a long time holdout on that stuff. And I forget the guy's name now. I had it a minute ago. But
Pavel Durov.
He would not give the keys to anybody to get back behind the covers on that thing. So
he wouldn't.
But I think that changed recently.
It did change. So Macron invited him to France. So Pavel Durov was a former Russian who was persecuted there. And so he fled to somewhere else in Europe. And he had a home in France amongst some other countries. And Macron said, hey, I want you to come join me for dinner and, just get caught up on things. And when he got there, they arrested him. And they said, we want access to Telegram. And if you don't give it to us, we're going to charge you under the new DSA, Digital Security Act in Europe, which, believe it or not, has been funded by us. And we're going to get into that. But the DSA is ultra restrictive and penalizes people just at an insane level. So he was held for 3 days. And finally, he said, okay, I'll give you backdoor access. So now the European Union and every country who's part of the European Union has back-end access to Telegram, so they can delete accounts, they can shadow ban accounts, they can suppress accounts, and it's no different than what they've had all this time with Facebook, Meta, Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. So not good. I appreciate you mentioning that, S2. So the next part or piece to this puzzle would be, so what does it look like in action? So number one, the worst would be deplatforming. So this is what they did to Donald Trump, right? They basically nuke your account, and X did it pretty heavy-handedly while Jack Dorsey was at the helm. YouTube did it and are still doing it for that matter. So YouTube have this habit of what they'll do is January will roll around and they will very quietly publish new terms of service that are more restrictive year after year. And then they'll let it sit there for 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is. And they'll start picking channels off. And it's not 3 strikes inside of 90 days. It's deplatform because you went against something that they don't want amplified. YouTube is by far the slowest platform to make any positive changes. We can now mention things like the 2020 election being stolen, but God forbid you speak out against that thing. That would be instant channel deletion. So next one would be shadow banning. So if you're not familiar with that, that basically means that nobody on the platform sees you. Everything that you post, you're just talking to yourself for all intents and purposes. The next one would be search manipulation. So Google's results, for example, always skew towards what they call trusted sources, which means you're going to get a line of BS from CNN, Fox, MSNBC, whoever it is, even if somebody else has got the correct data on a blog, whatever the case may be, you won't see that. The thing is, 90% of the clicks on Google happen above the fold. So the fold is the bottom of your browser window. So what that means is 90% of the time, people just click whatever's on screen without scrolling down to go to more results and more results. The next one would be coordinated takedowns. So here's a good example. Say you had, hypothetically speaking, a lab leak happen, maybe somewhere in China. And as soon as the powers that be, all of the players we've mentioned, label it dangerous, it disappears off of every platform in the blink of an eye. And we've seen it happen time and again in the past 4 years. Yes, Elon restored an element of free speech, but we're nowhere near having the level of free speech that we should have. Now, on Todd Callender's new platform built for him called Liberty Club, libertyclub.net, we don't use an algorithm. The only thing that would get deleted would be pornography or anything illegal. And Todd is hell-bent determined to have a completely censorship-free platform other than pornography and illegal stuff. The next piece would be narrative enforcement. So what that means is these fact checkers slapping warnings on posts, community notes. There's been an explosion of bullshit community notes on X recently. We noticed it starting here actually on Survival Dispatch News, where people were arguing in our comment section saying that people, those of us who support Donald Trump, are abandoning him en masse and we're going to the Democrats. And people in the comment section would say, yeah, I voted for Donald Trump 3 times, but I can't believe he did this, this, and this. So I'm going to support the Democrats now. And it was all AstroTurf BS. So that's essentially the gist of the tools that they use. So the next part is, where did this idea come from? So it's a play on Eisenhower's military industrial complex. He was the one who coined that term. And if you want to just distill it down to its lowest common denominator, it's essentially unchecked power by merging public and private interests. So take the wealthiest corporations, take the biggest governments, and they work together on all these narratives, suppression, shadow banning, etc. So the censorship industrial complex term only popped up a few years ago after the 2020 election was stolen. And there was a expose called the Twitter files. And these were a bunch of internal documents that were released that described in very fine detail on how Jack Dorsey's team and Twitter worked super close with the Biden admin so that everything that you were seeing on X was highly curated bullshit. And to this day, it's still on X, not as bad as it was, but it's very prevalent on YouTube and Facebook, even though Zuckerberg said, yeah, well, we're going to back off on that because the Biden admin made us do that, but we're not going to do it anymore. Nothing's changed, of course. It's all baloney. So essentially think of people, I'm trying to think of some high profile people. Matt Taibbi would be a great example. That guy has constantly posted truthful information that's firsthand research on his part, and he's been slapped down countless times. It's amazing he even has a presence anymore. And then there's a counter argument to this, and these would be the defenders of the censorship industrial complex, where they say, this is just companies and regulators managing harmful content. And then they'll say misinformation kills people because it's anti this or something to that fact, or it's hate speech. And therefore that's going to radicalize people who are going to go on to commit crimes. And coordination, there's no coordination. It's just practical cooperation between the government and private industry, and they basically, the people who defend this will say there's no censorship. It doesn't exist. That's just overblown by people who are mad that their fringe narrative or take on something didn't go viral. So with all that being said, who's this guy up on the screen right here? This is Eric Schmitt. And Eric is a senator now for Missouri. Prior to that, he was the attorney general for the state of Missouri. And as y'all probably know, those of you who follow us, the current attorney general for Missouri, who came in right after Eric, is our friend Andrew. Isn't that awful? I just forgot his last name. Andrew Bailey. Thank you. I don't have my pad of paper beside me to write my notes down tonight. Anyway, his chief of staff, James Lawson, is a friend of mine. And we had a discussion regarding Eric Schmitt, because Eric Schmitt we are going to cover this monster thread that he just published on this topic, and that is going to be the entire chapter 1 for us. I can tell you this, we can confirm that Andrew Bailey's office right now are working on multiple initiatives to, their words, not mine, by the way, blow the doors off of the censorship industrial complex. So it's fixing to heat up, and I'm not surprised based on the current, political temperature, for lack of a better term. So this is Eric's page for when he ran for senator. I'm not going to read it. If you're interested in it, schmittforsenate.com, and it speaks to his values, his family, and everything else. So that's it for my long-winded summary of who's involved in the censorship industrial complex and what their MO is, modus operandi. Jeff, I'm going to go to you, then S2, then John. I want to hear all of your high-level thoughts on all this censorship stuff and how it is just not consistent with what we feel are our rights under the Constitution. I think you're on mute, Jeff.
Yeah, it's absolutely not in concert with the Constitution. The Constitution, gives you freedom of speech. It doesn't. It recognizes your God-given right of freedom of speech. It doesn't grant you that right. And so the government can't come in there and tell you can't say anything. But what they're doing is they're going to all these companies and saying, well, we can't tell them to shut up, but you can just take them down. And people need to understand the government cannot legally ask a private party to do something on the government's behalf that the government cannot do itself. It's sort of like saying, well, I can't hit you in the face, so that's assault. But oh, Billy over here, he's going to punch your lights out at my request. That's still against the law. And that's what they've been doing. They've been going, the FBI, CIA, all these people, they've been going to the big tech companies and saying, these are the things we want you to release. Here are the people we want you to shadow ban or to just eliminate altogether. Here are the stories we don't want to be amplified. Hunter Biden's laptop, for example. And, the government went to the big media companies, the tech companies, and said, hey, something's going to be coming down the pike where the Russians are going to be using, some internet story and for disinformation. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge, be on alert. And then, like 2 days later, wham, here it comes. So, yeah, those people should be in jail because they violated the First Amendment of the Constitution for about, 300 million people.
Yeah, plus.
Yeah.
S2, I want to hear your high-level thoughts here on this. I think you're on mute, S2.
Everybody thinks the censorship stuff is new, and it's not. It's been going on since the days of the Mayflower. As an example, Governor Bradford of Plymouth in 1629, there was a guy named Thomas Morton who was writing pretty racy rhymes at that point in time, and he was publishing them. And basically, what at the time the moral position on that, he was lending to lasciviousness. So what did he do? He sent the military to his home to stop it. And then even as far back as 1734 with John Peter Zenger case, that was basically about where he published some critical information about the New York governor, William Crosby. He was jailed for 8 months before he went to trial for this.
Wow.
And he ultimately he was found not guilty, but the judge basically said that, well, if you can't prove that it's true, then I can put you in jail for this. And I mean, this goes on all the way through all of the wars. This even happened pre-Civil War, where the Postmaster General would not allow postmen to deliver abolitionist material to any place in the South. So this has been going on for a long time, and it didn't really start hitting its heyday until World War II, I think it was. But I mean, it was going on in World War I under Woodrow Wilson, and all kinds of stuff there. So, like I said, this is nothing new. It's just been given a case of or given a dose of steroids here in the last 4 years because it didn't fit the globalist narrative.
Yeah. Quick
Politicians don't like people saying things that the politicians don't like. And that has been going on since there have been the first politician.
So just a quick update. I'm sure you all noticed that John dropped off the podcast. Smokey Bear pulled him over, and he's dealing with that right now. He just texted me, and when Smokey Bear's done with him, covering him up in paper, he'll be back on the podcast.
Probably going to give him a ticket for talking on the phone.
Would not surprise me whatsoever. So
hands free, what the hell?
So this is the mega thread, by the way, from Eric Schmitt. But before we go into that, I think we should cover Section 230. And this is the Internet Decency Act of 1996. So this is dates back a couple years, but I'll start partway through and I'll just give you the highlights. So the law passed in 1996 was designed to prevent internet companies from being treated as publishers and was done in part to allow the internet to flourish. It shields companies that can host trillions of messages like Facebook and Twitter from being sued by anyone who is wronged by something someone else has posted. Section 230 protections also allow social media platforms to moderate their content by removing posts that violate the service's own standards, so long as they are acting in good faith. So more than 2 decades later, critics of the law say it has been interpreted in the courts well beyond its original intent and has handed private tech companies the keys to the modern day version of the public square. Politicians on both sides of the aisle agree big tech has immense power that needs to be reined in and regulated, while some want to repeal Section 230 altogether. So I don't know if either one of you want to comment on Section 230 beyond what I just threw out there, but if so, let's do that now before we get into Eric Schmitt stuff.
Well, just briefly, the principle behind it makes sense. It's like if I get on, I get on Facebook and I go, S2 is a douchebag. Okay, well, S2 can sue me for slander, but he can't sue Facebook because I put it on Facebook, because the whole idea is that it's my speech, not Facebook's speech. So the whole idea was to do a carve out. So, just like if I put in the news, if I take a personal ad out and call somebody an idiot, it's not the newspaper's fault. But it's gone, with any good idea, they have stretched it to the point where it's now absurd.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So let's dive into Eric Schmitt's big thread. And this is a really big thread, but it caught my eye when I noticed he posted this because it's such an important topic, especially over the past 4 years. So basically, Eric says the left spent the past decade building a vast censorship enterprise, shadowy network of NGOs, tech groups, and governments working to censor the left's enemies, not just in America, but across the West. Over the next 4 years, the GOP must expose and dismantle this system. I want to make a quick comment before we go any further with this. Did either of you happen to catch Michelle Obama and her brother's new podcast called IMO, in my opinion?
Yeah, I've asked several times, is Mike's brother a chick?
It's a legit question. Okay. So her brother looks as feminine as he does, whatever it is, sort of thing. But where I was going with that is we saw, and this is in your wheelhouse, us too, we saw that when the USAID money dried up that was going to fund NGOs that had been formed by people like George Soros, that all of a sudden these crowds of protesters were absolutely minuscule. So we saw people comment essentially and say, this thing that we've been led to believe, that the left is larger than life, they're a huge movement, have a huge presence. I think that's what's happening with Michelle Obama now. So her first podcast, I want to say, got 4,000 views in the first day, and now it's 20,000 or something like that. Don't go by my numbers, but it's small numbers. And I watched a little bit, as much as I could stomach, basically. And she said, well, you know, there's people out there who want to hear from people of note, like us. Every other word, by the way, is I or me. And, you know, those are her three go-to. Yes. Here's what I'm getting at. The videos are bombing. They're brutally boring. They're trying to give people advice, and they actually believe their own bullshit that the left has been larger than life all these years. And there's a reckoning happening right now amongst the left that, holy shit, we don't have the support that we thought we had. The comment section is so lit up. They've put 3 episodes out now. That people are saying you're going to have to turn the comments off, because almost every single comment is on Big Mike Obama. Stuff. I mean, it's comical to read, but at the end of the day, I think it's this hubris, right? They believe that they are larger than life, and in reality, they aren't larger than life. And the whole thing was fabricated by taking our tax dollars and blowing it on NGOs to make it look larger than life. So, anyway, I think that's an example of it. So, moving on. Go ahead, Jeff.
The way that I could term that is that they were only as big as the wallet they were carrying.
Right. That's funny. So moving on down through this thread, the censorship industrial complex wasn't built overnight. It's been festering for years. But the Biden administration mobilized an unholy alliance of government power, taxpayer dollars, NGOs, and big tech companies to build it into a global censorship powerhouse. Seemingly every agency was a partner in building this system: FBI, CIA, NSA, DHS, State Department, Department of Education, National Science Foundation, USAID, even FEMA. Through grants and partnerships, these agencies funneled countless tax dollars to censorship groups. So here's an example of that happening. So you got the National Science Foundation gives $5.7 million to this nonprofit meeting. And what do? They build tools to monitor WhatsApp. So if you read the terms of service for WhatsApp, which is used extensively internationally, they have access to every single one of your messages. They have AI parsing it. They have for years. Anyway, so that 5.7 goes to that company to make the tools. And then another 5.75 million goes to develop an AI that is just dedicated to tracking and censoring information with no human oversight. And then another 2.25 million for rapid response. So rapid response will be something along the lines of, imagine if we went back to Benghazi, for example, and, you know, they tried to put out this bullshit narrative that it was because of a video on YouTube, and then people dismissed that out of hand right away and knew that it was something bigger than that. They didn't have this technology then that they have now, which basically allows them, when something like that pops up, if we had a Benghazi situation again and they wanted the narrative to be a YouTube video, the narrative would stay a YouTube video, and it would all be done autonomically through these systems. So here's another example. FEMA spent $2.6 million on disinformation analysis contract. And what did they come up with? Look at the chart in the bottom left here. So a list of least dangerous news sources: NPR, AP News, Associated Press. I've heard some people call that almost press. New York Times, ProPublica Insider, USA Today, Washington Post, BuzzFeed, Wall Street Journal, Huffington Post. And then these dangerous people over here. And of course, they put them on the right in red. New York Post, Reason Magazine, RCP, Real Clear Politics, Daily Wire, The Blaze, which of course is Glenn Beck, One American News Network, American Conservative, Federalist, Newsmax, American Spectator. So essentially what happened here is this money was used to amplify the ones on the left and mute the ones on the right. So before we go on to the next section, do either of you want to say anything with regards to how that money went from government departments to NGOs to private parties, and the whole thing was coordinated in lockstep?
And all the rest was given to CNN.
A lot of it was. Good point. All right. So Eric's next comments. What you have to understand is that these groups operate as one cohesive class, and that's what I was getting at. This is now a blob that's in concert. There's a revolving door between the public and private spheres. So this is interesting. Former government officials populate the advisory boards of every single one of these disinformation groups, and vice versa. So this is interesting. This is from another gentleman. The groups behind the X/Twitter ad boycott say they're non-governmental, but they're not. They're funded by governments, work with intel agencies, and or were caught spying for governments. Congress and UK Parliament must investigate this government-backed assault on free speech. Government and intel and security agencies behind NGO demands for more censorship by X and Twitter, and that's 2 years ago in 2023. But back to Eric's comment here, essentially what happened was when Donald Trump won in 2016, over the course of the next 4 years, and this was in the initial steps of building the censorship industrial complex, a bunch of Obama's cabinet members ended up working for all these NGOs, the tech companies, software companies, etc. Then when they stole the election in 2020, a whole bunch of them left those NGOs and tech companies to be part of the Biden admin. And then when we just won the election back, guess where a bunch of them went? These government censors, they're back to working.
The tech companies.
Yeah.
It's incestuous. There's no other way to describe it.
And I'll give you another example of this too. This isn't just this industry; it's also in the medical industry. So when we saw the United Healthcare guy when he was murdered by Luigi Mangione,
Yes.
what we saw in that investigation, or at least what I uncovered in that investigation, was that there were two different groups. There was the American Hospital Association and the American Medical Association. They are both incestuous in themselves in that they bounce back and forth between each other, and they are fed as being staffers from former politicians or politicians themselves.
A good point. You mentioned big pharma, right? Big food, same thing as well. That there's
I did not mention the name that shall be mentioned.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So the next comment from Eric Schmitt: Biden's transition team was stacked with tech insiders. They staffed the entire executive branch, state, treasury, EPA, OMB, etc. Many of them were Obama alumni. When Obama left office, they went to work in tech. When Biden's presidency began, they transitioned right back in again. So here's a headline here: Biden transition team quietly taps Silicon Valley employees who will concurrently work for Facebook and Google. And then the next one here, and the title of this article is Biden's transition team is stacked with tech players. And I won't read the whole thing, but I'll give you a couple examples from this. So Joe Biden's transition team, this is November 10th, 2020, by the way, which was 7 days after the election, is absolutely stacked with tech industry players, according to a list of Biden's agency review teams released Tuesday. From big name tech companies: Tom Sullivan, Amazon's director of tax planning; Mark Swartz, Amazon Web Services. And then as you go down the list, there's Airbnb, there's Lyft, LinkedIn, more Airbnb, Uber, Stripe, Dropbox, Dell, a couple other software companies I'm not familiar with. And then on the other side, tech, philanthropy, you've got people from all kinds of big groups. I'm not familiar with all of them, by the way, but I'm looking for one that I do recognize. And actually, I'll be honest with you, the only one I recognize is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and then tech advocacy as well. And I'm not entirely familiar with all those names. Brookings Institution, I know that. So at the end of the day, the concept of it being a revolving door of the same bad actors is legitimate comment on Eric's part and other people. So it should come as no surprise that these worlds are in constant communication with one another. Remember Jen Psaki boasting that they were flagging problematic posts for Facebook? These weren't independent actors. Under the Biden administration, it was one system. White House flagging COVID disinformation for social media censors. And it went so beyond that. I mean, do you want to take us back in time a few years, either one of you, and comment on how ridiculous it was and is to this day. Like, we have to be very careful if we say the name of that, anti-parasitic drug that has been taken 15 billion times, but is really good at this. Jeff, do you want to comment on the proliferation? You're on mute.
It really took off when C-19 hit, and everything was in place, and that's when they really revved it up. And they could do it because, hey, it's for the health of the country, it's for security, it's for this. You can't say anything bad about this medicine. You can't say anything good about that medicine. And I think it was almost like it was their test to make sure all this crap worked. And then once the pandemic was over, they said, okay, what can we point it at? What can we target now? Well, how about anything Trump? So they started going after Trump and anything Trump would say, or anybody who supported Trump. And then anyone who kind of pushed back was deplatformed. Their stuff was silenced, and they worked great until Trump won. And they really, I don't think they thought he was going to win.
I would say it worked great until Elon bought X.
Well, yeah, that was the first one. But now Elon did it from the private side. Now Trump can go in and do it from the government side. And those two working together, I'm hoping, can just unravel all this crap. Because, what's his name? Who owns X or, Twitter? I can't remember his name now.
Well, you mean the old Twitter, Jack Dorsey?
Yeah, Jack Dorsey. Well, he started Blue Sky, and then he got out of Blue Sky, but Blue Sky didn't have the reach, and so people got used to Twitter. They got addicted to Twitter, and even the ones who say, "I'll never post on X again," yeah, you wait about 48 hours. They're always posting on X.
You want to hear the kicker about X or about Dorsey? He got locked out of his own account today.
Yeah,
I saw that. Yeah, locked out of his account.
Rules or something.
How many times has that bonehead Keith Olbermann said, "I'm leaving X. I'm never coming back. I'm so mad I have urine coming out of my eyes." What the F? I mean, absolutely mentally insane. So anyway, moving along here. So Eric makes the point here that we have brought up a couple times. Biden officials didn't just flag content. They pushed platforms to transform their algorithms to suppress ideas they disliked. In an email, Biden's digital director told YouTube that this is a concern that is shared at the highest, and I mean highest levels of the White House. So here's a copy of that email right here. So thanks again for the conversation today. We'll look out for the top trends that you've seen in terms of misinformation around the vaccine. To recap, as we move away from a supply problem toward a demand problem, we remain concerned that YouTube is funneling people into hesitance and intensifying people's hesitancy. We certainly recognize that removing content that is unfavorable to the cause of increasing vaccine adoption is not a realistic or even good solution, but we want to be sure that you have a handle on vaccine hesitancy, gene rally, and are working toward making the problem better. This is a concern that is shared at the highest, and I mean highest levels of the White House. So we'd like to continue a good faith dialogue about what's going on under the hood here. I'm the one on the hook for reporting out. So that was Rob Flaherty, and a bunch of stuff is obviously redacted, but they're all Google addresses that were copied on it essentially. And there are many, many stories, by the way, of government officials having absolute temper tantrums because one of the platforms was too slow to remove the information that challenged their narrative. And they needed to be more responsive and faster because you're letting...
Did they think that people were never going to say, hey, wait a minute, why are they trying to keep me from saying this stuff? Did they think that was never going to happen?
Apparently, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. All right. So the next part of Eric's big thread here, those are just a few minor examples of a trend that accelerated over the past decade. Western governments creating, funding, or coordinating with powerful outside groups to clamp down on right-wing dissent. Just look at the State Department's Global Engagement Center. So this is their Global Engagement Center. Oh, look who's the first one on the left here, USAID. And if we zoom in on this, let's see who else we've got. Director of National Intelligence, DNI, CIA, Department of Homeland Security, Central Command, Strategic Command, Cyber Command, trying to read that one down there, Africa Command, DARPA, Joint Special Forces Command, NSA, Department of Justice, and back to our friends at USAID. This was huge. I mean, this was not a small thing. So between 2020 and 2021, two State Department-backed entities, the Global Engagement Center, GEC, and the National Endowment for Democracy, funneled $665,000 to the Global Disinformation Index. The Global Disinformation Index, a British nonprofit which creates secretive blacklists of conservative media. Government-backed disinformation group under fire for punishing outlets that reported on lab leak theory, which has been confirmed 100%. The Energy Department concluded that Charlie 19 likely originated in a lab. So I can tell you from firsthand experience, maybe not at this level, but a level or two below that, I've been put on lists multiple times by people on X, and it's a list that says, mega people or, right-wing lunatics, fascists, all this sort of stuff. And you'll get a notification that somebody's put you on this list. You can't get off the list because they've just put a list of people that would be somebody they would typically follow, but they've used it to identify a bunch of people. And I never really thought too much about it until recently. And now that, the young man from InfoWars was murdered, and you've got these SWATs going on, and General Flynn said yesterday that there was a credible threat to Alex Jones's life. It's made me, think a couple times, not that I'm on their level, but it makes me thankful that we live in a stand your ground state and that we carry everywhere we go.
Here's something interesting here too. The National Endowment for Democracy. Guess who they're funded by? USAID.
I was going to say USAID, right? Okay, so GDI's blacklists were stealthily fed to advertising companies to financially cripple targeted news outlets. The top 10 outlets on its disinformation list are all conservative. GDI's CEO openly boasted that this had a significant impact on the outlet's advertising revenue. So we're back to that list again of least dangerous on the left, most dangerous on the right. I won't read all the names again to you. The GEC was created to combat foreign propaganda aimed at undermining U.S. security, but instead it was turned inwards on our own citizens. We've seen this stuff happen across our intelligence and security agencies. I fought to shutter the GEC for good, which is the Global Engagement Center. Must be excluded from any subsequent piece of legislature for the remainder of the 118th Congress. The American people deserve to know that their First Amendment rights are being protected. So this is a letter that Eric Schmitt wrote to Chuck Schumer just before the beginning of 2025 on this particular topic. And of course, you're not going to get anywhere with somebody like Schumer on that because Schumer's team is the one who built this crap. All right. During the 2020 election under President Trump's first term, the Department of Homeland Security's CISA formed a counter disinformation coalition with powerful outside censorship groups. Here's what that network did during the election cycle alone per FFO Freedom's analysis. 22 million tweets labeled misinformation, 859 million tweets collected in databases for misinformation analysis, 120 analysts monitoring social media misinformation in up to 20-hour shifts, 15 tech platforms monitored for misinformation in real time, less than 1 hour average response time between government partners and tech platforms, dozens of misinformation narratives targeted for platform-wide throttling, and hundreds of millions of individual Facebook posts, YouTube videos, TikToks, and tweets impacted due to misinformation, terms of service policy changes that DHS partners openly plotted and bragged tech companies would never have done without DHS partner insistence and huge regulatory pressure from government. This system operates across the borders of the West, giving it yet another way around our Constitution. When their censorship machine faced legal challenges in the US, Biden officials and their nonprofit allies began using foreign censorship laws to crack down on American speech. So Biden administration issues statements supporting EU Digital Services Act. Joe Biden's United States has been accused of issuing a statement supporting the European Union's Digital Services Act, despite repeated concerns from civil society organizations that the regulation could hamper freedom of speech online. Could, absolutely did. EU law targets big tech over hate speech, disinformation. European Union officials reached an agreement on a set of new rules aimed at protecting internet users by forcing big tech companies like Google and Facebook to step up their efforts to curb the spread of illegal content. So let's talk what they classify as illegal content. Anything that goes against the official narrative, illegal content. Anything that goes against military-aged men, invaders being brought into European countries, illegal. Anybody who questioned the pokey thing in your shoulder, illegal activity. And that's not hyperbole. They've been arresting people for their Facebook posts, their Instagram posts, all their posts that violate the DSA. And not too long ago, that lady right there in the green jacket, I can't remember her name, but she's the head of the EU, basically said if Elon Musk steps foot anywhere in Europe, he will be arrested for breaking their DSA rules because he allowed information to get out. Go ahead.
It kind of sounds a lot like Hitler's campaign in World War II with censorship. And I'm going to tell you what my thoughts are on why it sounds so much like this, because a little known fact is that the EU was developed as a plan B to Hitler's plan for world domination. And these are the very same tactics that they used back then. The EU was actually started by a gentleman named Hellerstein, if I'm not mistaken. And he basically laid the groundwork for the EU, basing it on Hitler's plan B.
Very interesting. Not surprised, but very interesting. All right, so moving on down this monster thread. The system operates, we already did that across the borders. At least 23 U.S.-funded NGOs, nonprofits, and disinformation groups have received nearly $15.5 million of your tax dollars to help enforce the EU's draconian new Digital Services Act. This was March 12th last year, by the way, which levies heavy fines on tech platforms, including U.S. platforms, for allowing disinformation. So here it is. The EU's Digital Services Act aims to impose massive fines on American tech companies that fail to comply with its draconian requirements to curb disfavored speech. Once the EU's voluntary code of practice on disinformation becomes mandatory, tech companies will be obligated under EU law to censor disinformation and misinformation. The Foundation for Freedom Online has identified 10 U.S. government-funded organizations that signed the EU's code of practice, roughly 20% of the signatories. A further 13 organizations, a mix of news agencies, nonprofits, analytics companies, and universities, are involved in enforcing the EU's speech rules through its network of digital observatories that monitor online platforms for disfavored information and narratives. One organization, NewsGuard, is both a signatory and an enforcer. In total, 23 U.S.-funded organizations are involved in the EU's censorship regime, either supporting it through their signatories or directly participating in it through the digital observatory system. Ooh, that's a pile of information there. Jeff, give me your thoughts as far as the level of cooperation amongst all these different countries. This is no small undertaking. This is a big thing that they built. You're on mute.
Yeah, it's the EU. I mean, they are basically unelected. I mean, they you rarely go vote for somebody in the EU. Your country, you vote for someone on. If you're in France, you vote for someone in France, and then you have some EU member of parliament or something like that. But you don't get to vote. The people don't get to vote on any of this crap. They have this huge bureaucracy. It spreads across all borders, and it dictates every aspect of European life. And the last thing they want is people complaining. And that's why anyone who comes up and says, I don't think we should have this much immigration. Oh, well, that's hate speech. Boom, you're shut down. Or you think, hey, I want to vote for a candidate here in Romania who thinks that maybe our primary focus here in Romania should be Romania. Well, okay, they canceled the election, and now he's been put in jail and taken off the ballot, even though he won the election. Because Europe has always been Europe. It has always been ruled by elites. It's been ruled by royalty. It's been ruled by military dictators. I mean, if you look at Germany, was created by Bismarck. Well, Bismarck was essentially a German dictator. He pulled all these German-speaking countries together and turned it into Germany. Put the Prussians in charge. You look at France. You had the king, and then they cut his head off. Well, who replaced him? Well, you have Robespierre and all these guys who went around cutting other people's heads off, and eventually you had Napoleon Bonaparte, who crowned himself emperor and then proceeded to invade all of Europe. They do not have a democratic tradition there.
Good
Communists. They're communists.
Well, they're elitists, and whether they're communist elites or royalist elites, they still think the peasants they're just peasants. Let us make the decision for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. All right, so almost at the end of Eric's monster thread here. So, in other words, using these groups, our government was helping European bureaucrats, I call them Eurofags, by the way, bully U.S. tech companies into censoring American speech. That includes groups like NewsGuard, whose advisory board has boasted the former heads of the CIA, NSA, DHS, and the GEC, respectively, pardon me. And that's this center section here, which I'll skip past. So, to sum things up, American and European bureaucrats, along with their friends in the NGOs and the tech companies, have been working together to wage a war of censorship and suppression against their own citizens across the West. I fought this censorship industrial complex as Attorney General of Missouri, where I sued the Biden admin for pressuring tech platforms into censoring conservatives and took them to the Supreme Court. Now it's time to work with President Trump to end this once and for all. GOP Senator, which of course Eric Schmitt, who sued over big tech censorship, vows to enforce chilling decision against Biden. Thankfully, President Trump is dismantling the government arm of this regime. The State Department's Global Engagement Center has been shut down. Funding streams for disinformation groups have been cut, but many of the private censorship NGOs are still operating as we speak. State Department's Global Engagement Center, accused of pushing censorship to combat online disinformation, shuts down. That's good news there. The stories I've shared in this thread are just the tip of the iceberg. Stay tuned. The fight is just getting started. So we've got a short video with Dan Bongino that I'm going to play, and that will wrap up chapter 1. Actually, I do want to mention General Mike Flynn here. So General Mike Flynn, people must be arrested for this. We don't need special counsels. We need people brought in for questioning. It needs to be done for national security reasons, and it must be done now. There's a sense of desperation in the air, and the guilty ones are pulling out all the stops. That was last night, by the way. So short video from Dan Bongino, final thoughts from both of you, and then we'll go straight into chapter 2.
Some of the coercion that was coming from government officials to Facebook and Twitter, now at the time Twitter, now X, pre-Elon. We have the emails. What was his name? Rob Flaherty. It was a Biden White House official who was sending I'm not just going to say implicitly threatening emails, explicitly threatening emails to Facebook, basically saying, hey, be a real shame, if your place burned down, if you don't take this post down. I mean, it was almost like organized crime mob-like tactics. You can read the emails yourself, folks. They're all public, but that's what you were dealing with in this case.
And they had a special portal, Dan, a special portal between high-ranking government officials and senior executives at Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, where they were flagging things. They were using the full force of the government to outsource their censorship. And, talking about the NGOs, and I had a thread, if anybody wants to go on X today, a thread laying some of this stuff out. We're going to continue this NGO investigation, because even in that case, we discovered that universities like Stanford and the University of Washington were being used to flag some of this, what they believed was wrong think. And then the government would put pressure on social media companies. So this was a vast network that was all about, much like the story of COVID really, was all about power and control. That's what this was. And people who never should have had it in the first place had way too much of it, and they were willing to exercise it in ways that were unimaginable. Think about the OSHA vaccine mandate, Dan.
Yeah.
That was an agency created to make sure forklifts beeped when they back up, not force a medical procedure on 100 million people.
Wow. All right. So, Jeff, your parting thoughts on tonight's topic?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've been railing against for years here, but I think when Elon bought Twitter, and then he allowed Taibbi and Schellenberger to go through the Twitter files, and they outed all this stuff, and it kind of pulled the curtain back. And now that Trump's in there, and we can get rid of USAID, we can gut a lot of the spending at some of these intel agencies and stuff, because CIA and NSA should only be looking abroad. They should not be looking domestically at all. And if they've got enough money to do that, they have too much money, and they need to have their budgets cut and their personnel cut. But yeah, it needs the disinfection of daylight. So
well said. Well said. As to your parting thoughts.
Well, having been somebody that's been shadow banned on certain platforms, I mean, I get to go on there and I get to watch stuff, but I can't say anything. It's been refreshing to get back on X, and it's I've had one hiccup so far where I've gotten dinged for saying something to forget what his name was now, the coffee dude. But it's
Black Rifle.
No. No, George Clooney.
Oh, okay.
He said something stupid, and so I couldn't resist. But having this whole thing torn down, I can't imagine what. Honestly, going back the last 4 years, I can't remember what it was like before the last 4 years, because it's hit everybody so hard, to where everybody got to the point of where they were being like trained like dogs to self-censor themselves when they're on podcasts. I mean, having to find coded ways to speak, you felt like you were in the middle of the Cold War.
Yeah, we still are. I mean, we know if we say the wrong words tonight, broadcasted to 8 platforms, for sure, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook will nail us, and possibly Instagram as well. We have to be super careful to this day.
I guess the point that I'm making is that when I take the comparison of other platforms that I used to be on compared to X now, I can pretty much say whatever I damn well please to whoever I want to say it to, and I don't get dinged or shadow banned. In fact, I woke up this morning and all of my notifications from the stuff that I posted yesterday, my notifications got the doors blown off. I had so many in there. It was like,
that's funny.
Wow. And it was kind of like yesterday I had this little box pop up and said, you have just unlocked your something or other, and now your account has more reach. And all of a sudden everything that I said was exploding. And it was like, yeah, that's what I said. So I think we're on the front end of this here at this point, but I can't imagine what it's going to be like when it's actually gone.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it'll all completely go away because of Europe's influence. They force our tech companies to behave, you know, in concert with their
Well,
ridiculous laws and
that
stuff. So
that can be reversed as well.
it can be, and hopefully we make progress there. But this is actually a really good opportunity to bring up Todd Callender's new platform, libertyclub.net, not .com, libertyclub.net. You can sign up for free. We have paid accounts as well that bring a bunch of additional features to you, but we built it in such a way that I refer to it as a distraction-free interface. So you have a stream, much like you would have a stream on X or Facebook or whatever, but we elected not to use sidebars so that the whole interface was essentially, again, distraction-free, and it's almost done feature-wise. The features we have to add aren't anything major that will affect anybody. So if you want true freedom of speech, go to libertyclub.net, sign up for a free account. And if you like what you see, then you can sign up for a paid account as well. So that is the end of chapter 1.
And I have to roll out.
All right, go eat your dinner. All right,
Go eat your cold dinner.
That's right.
All right. Appreciate your input, Jeff. For the rest of you, we're going to roll into chapter 2 now. And before we do that, I want to just bring this up. This is one of our sponsors from tonight. So see if I can get it in frame here. I've got one of those AI cameras, and the dang thing wants to follow my face. So this is a metal detector from OMMO, OMMO. It's 49% off right now, or $49 off. One of the two. I'll give you all a link here in just a second. And this might actually be better to this camera in front of me instead.
Good for finding those guns you buried in the backyard.
Correct. And I'm not sure if it's this one or the other one. They sent 2 of these to us. I'm going to assemble it this weekend and, evaluate it. But for $75, and like I say, one of them you can use underwater, I think it's pretty darn reasonable for what it is. I mean, I remember visiting my grandparents here in Central Florida when I was a kid, and you saw a ton of people on the beach back then with these metal detectors. So there it is. It's it's 49% off right now, $75. Like I say, I will put a link in the chat that'll go to pretty much every platform, and we don't get any affiliate stuff or anything like that from this. It's just something that somebody sent us and asked us to evaluate it. We'll let you all know what we think, but I will mention the other thing here, by the way. It's rated the #1 Amazon's choice for metal detectors. So take that for whatever it's worth. And I think that graphic right there, by the way, is supposed to be showing water. I think the blue one is the one that goes underwater and the other one doesn't go underwater. But either way, pretty cool stuff. So like I said, we're going to roll straight into chapter 2 now. And here we go. So one of the news items that caught my eye today, international news items, was this alleged execution of Ukrainian POWs in Kursk. And it's prompted an international inquiry. Videos and images circulated on social media depict the alleged execution of at least 5 Ukrainian prisoners of war by Russian forces in the Kursk region, specifically near the village of Kazacha Lochna. Ukrainian Ombudsman Dmitry Lubinets has responded by sending formal complaints to international bodies for investigation. The authenticity of the footage and the legal implications under international law are currently under scrutiny. So because we're broadcasting to Facebook and YouTube and all these platforms that do not allow full freedom of speech, I can't play the video. If I played the video, the AI would pick up on it in the blink of an eye and would completely shut us down. So, but these are some still images before it happened. And these are the Ukrainians in this picture who were essentially, murdered POWs. And if you go to X in particular, and you just hit the explore button on the left right here, it'll come up as one of the main stories. So pretty crazy stuff. Although I did catch, and I'm sure you caught it to us too, that Putin has agreed to a ceasefire. So
in principle.
yeah, I mean it's moving in the right direction. Zelensky already signed on for it. If Putin does as well, I don't know how it'll happen, but I don't know how they could justify not giving a Nobel Peace Prize to Donald Trump. Of course, they won't because they hate his guts.
Well, this particular article right here with the Ukrainians being executed or whatever, they are working overtime to try to kick a war off. It doesn't matter if it's here,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if it's over in the Middle West. They are working overtime with this, and the timing of this is very suspicious based on that fact.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, so moving on. Next one up, we've already basically touched on this. Trump's proposal, no taxes for under 150K. So I don't think there's much more to say on that. Next one up, Rosie O'Donnell's move to Ireland sparks transatlantic debate. Rosie O'Donnell, prominent American comedian, that's being overly kind, and television personality, has relocated to Ireland, a move she made just before Donald Trump's second inauguration. Due to her ongoing public disputes with him, she has expressed intentions to apply for Irish citizenship through her grandparents. This move has elicited a range of reactions, including humorous comments from President Trump during a meeting with Ireland's prime minister, where he jokingly questioned the wisdom of Ireland accepting O'Donnell. Public discourse online has included both support for O'Donnell's stance on equal rights and criticism or humor regarding her move. Some Irish citizens and commentators have expressed a desire for her to return to the U.S., reflecting a mix of national pride and political commentary, blah, blah, blah. I saw some funny memes that basically said Ireland was going to put all kinds of tariffs on Irish whiskey and stuff until we take Rosie back.
My favorite one was the guy with the Georgia accent trying to make him sound like he was Irish today.
Too funny. All right. So next one up here, Jack Posobiec has some comments on what the globalists are doing to Ireland, and it is disgusting. So you got a country that's 96% WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, and they are flying and bussing in hordes of military-age men from Africa and other points in the Middle East. They're absolutely trying to annihilate the culture in Ireland. And
the key point of all of that is not necessarily the races or the ethnicities of it. It's more about the religion that they're trying to foment. Because for years in Ireland, you had the war between the Irish and the Catholics and the Protestants, and then they got together and went against the British. So now they're inserting Islam in there along with that. So I think what you're going to see is going to be a replay of what's been going on there, where the Catholics and the Protestants are going to link arms together and they're going to go against the Muslims.
It's almost mind-boggling to think that the Catholics and the Protestants would team up, but I guess for a matter of national security, I get it. I understand why they did it, but anyway, appreciate the additional commentary there. I've got a short video from Jack Posobiec here. I'm not sure that we'll play the whole thing, but this is the interaction between Trump and the Prime Minister of Ireland in the Oval Office, and Trump saying, you might not want to take her.
Look, I'm a huge fan of Ireland, love the country, love the place, but I got to tell you something. You've got people like this current guy that's up there right now. These are globalists. These are wild. These are complete nut jobs. And what they're doing to Ireland is disgusting. What they're doing to Ireland is absolutely disgusting. The migrant influx, the post-2015 migrant spike with recent years, even in 2025, thousands, tens of thousands of people that are allowed in 2022, 2023, 2024, now in 2025. And guess what? You're seeing an increase in rape, increase in 23%. You're seeing it, which is now higher than the EU average. You're pushing an increase in sometimes murder in some of these areas. And more to the point, you go to places like Dublin, you barely see any Irish people. I've said this, I've been to Dublin multiple times. You don't see Irish people going around there. London has the same issue, but in Ireland, it's even worse because Ireland is so small. And so explain something to me. And this is something Conor McGregor has been huge on this. He's been great on it. And we're going to try to get Brian Glenn on, because there was a whole situation in the White House earlier with him. But here's something I want to try to figure out is, what exactly is the purpose for this? So let's say that, because, you hear the left, you hear the globalists, and they'll say, well, the reason that the UK has to take in all these migrants is, they were colonizing the world, and the same with Germany and Belgium and Austria and France. No, they were colonists. They were colonists. What did Ireland ever colonize? The Irish people are the indigenous people of Ireland. It's as simple as that.
Not according to Netflix. According to Netflix, Ireland was made by black people. It was not built by white people. And some people are dense enough to believe that. Anyway, moving on from there. This is pretty brutal. Utah judge fire chief arrested in child exploitation case. Former Tremonton Fire Department Chief Ned Brady Hansen and Box Elder County Judge Kevin Christensen are facing legal proceedings after being arrested for allegedly sharing child pornography and discussing sexual fantasies involving children. The community in Box Elder County, Utah is in shock, grappling with the betrayal of these two figures of authority. How deep is this rabbit hole as to I feel like we're just on the cusp of it. And I don't even think that the Diddy files and the Epstein files are going to get us anywhere near the bottom of this rabbit hole.
You mean in this particular one, or child exploitation
overall.
in general?
Yeah, I mean in general.
Oh, the whole fucking world is sick with it. I mean, it's been sick with it. I forget, it's FBI agent Gunderson, when he discovered the tunnels years ago. I mean, this has been going on. I know it's been going on way since before then. It's just that it was never out in your face like it is now.
Well, it's barely been a year since we had Victor Avila on. Victor, of course, one of the ICE agents, shot up in the Fast and Furious gun stuff in Mexico. His partner, Agent Zapata, is the one who died in his arms. And when I first met him, it's a little over a year ago, he was discussing this topic as to, and I said to him, can you clarify something for me? He said, yeah. I said, are we like the center of the universe for this child sex trafficking? And he said, yep, we sure are.
We're the largest consumer of it in the world.
So, yeah, I mean, just a terrible moniker to have hung around us, around our neck. So I said to him, he mentioned that the bad guys, the cartels, TDA, etc., would bring these children into the country, pimp them out 15, 20 times a day, and they would average lifespan of 3 years, and then they either kill themselves or, the bad guys would kill them. But he also said that we're exporting all kinds of these child victims. And I said to him, are you telling me that it's easier for the bad guys to bring these kids in from South and Central America into America and then export them around the world? And he said, that's exactly what I'm telling you.
Yeah, I think I told you that several months back.
This is over a year ago, though, when Victor Avila said it, and I was absolutely gobsmacked when I heard it. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah, because if you look at what's been happening at the border, they've just been taking these kids to these addresses, 3 and 4 at a time. These addresses are abandoned houses. They've got some dude sitting there waiting on them. He takes them wherever, and then he can get false documents stating that they're his kids and get them passports and then take them right out of the country wherever they want to go.
Unbelievable.
And personally, I think a lot of them have been ending up over in the Ukraine.
And that wouldn't be implausible at all. It was interesting. Victor was also the one who commented that the TDA is very opportunistic, and given the choice of selling cocaine and other hard drugs versus trafficking kids, they'd rather traffic kids because they make about $250,000 a year off of each kid. And as I mentioned, they're good for about 3 years. He said, they sell a big load of drugs. Well, now they have to take the risk all over again with the next load of drugs to sell it. And it's just a whole lot easier for them to make money by abusing these kids.
They got to worry about what to do with all the cash.
Yeah. It's insanity. All right. This is something that I'm surprised I haven't seen more coverage on. Sectarian violence in Syria, hundreds dead. Recent outbreaks of sectarian violence in Syria have resulted in the deaths of hundreds, with entire families, including women and children, being killed. The conflict primarily involves armed groups and has seen Alawite communities heavily affected, alongside other minorities like Christians. Reports indicate over 1,000 deaths in a mere 2 days due to these clashes and revenge killings. So all kinds of people, Tulsi Gabbard amongst others, predicted that this would happen when the Syrian government was brought down. Most people in the know will tell you that it was the CIA doing it before Trump came into office to essentially do their destabilization tricks in the Middle East. I don't really have much more to add to this as to what I'm shocked that it's not getting the coverage I would think it would get. And it doesn't bode well, right? The head of Syria now is an Al-Qaeda terrorist, has been for years. And so Al-Qaeda and ISIS are both flourishing now, again, in Syria. I don't know if you want to take a swing at that or not.
Well, that's why they don't want to talk about it a whole lot, because the news organizations are supported by the CIA
Right.
and other organizations that are responsible for toppling these countries. And they don't want to admit, oops, we fucked up.
Yeah. Good point. So here's a post earlier today from Elon. You can see the ridiculous political puppet show for what it really is. They are just actors reading a script. And how many times have you heard me say, we don't have politics, we have political theater. So about 50 House Democrats just posted the same exact talking points, word for word. So it's not just the Mockingbird media, it's the Mockingbird politicians. And it starts typically with the Mockingbird politicians, and then it rolls into the Mockingbird media and carries on from there. And somebody who was on like a James O'Keefe video, who's partaken in this multiple times on the part of these actors, basically said, yeah, it's easy to spot. It's quite obvious that it's a, controlled, concerted effort, but it works. The more we repeat it, and they pick their power words that evoke emotions and stuff, the more it sticks. And this is what we rail against. This is why we have done episodes on astroturfing and psyops and what are the things to look out for that indicate something is highly suspect. Well, when everybody's doing the same Mockingbird thing, that's a big, big red flag. And we've kind of covered that ad nauseum, but it was just another interesting example that came up today. All right. More stunning numbers come out from DHS ICE, further humiliating Biden and his border misinformation. We all knew that under Joe Biden, the southern border was a disaster, with millions of illegal aliens being welcomed in by a feckless administration that did little to nothing to stop them. Sex trafficking was rampant, as were endless humanitarian crises and suffering. Meanwhile, the front pages of the news had story after story of murders and crimes committed by criminals who should have never been here in the first place. Biden kept saying we need a new congressional bill to solve it, but since Trump's inauguration in January, he has exposed that lie over and over and has dramatically stemmed the flow to a trickle. Meanwhile, his team has been busy repatriating miscreants and gang members at a feverish pace. New numbers released by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Department of Homeland Security further tarnish the poisoned legacy of Obama, Biden, Mayorkas, blah, blah, blah. So the Trump admin now, in 50 days or so, has arrested more criminal aliens than the Biden admin did all year last year. So here's actually the numbers right down here. In Trump's first 50 days in office, from January 20th through March 10th, the Trump administration's ICE has made 32,809 arrests of illegal aliens in the interior of the U.S. Almost matches all of Biden's ICE interior arrests for fiscal year 2024, which were about 33,000. So phenomenal progress there. And that bill, that so-called bipartisan bill that Biden was pushing for, codified 5,000 illegals a day being put on a fast track to getting American citizenship. It was not a good deal. There was no need for it. And then, of course, when Trump asked people to vote against it, then the left shit all over Trump, saying that he killed the best chance at solving the border issue. And we all knew that that was bullshit. And here we go. The proof is in the pudding, the results.
I just put out a story today by Michael Yon, where Michael had been down there collecting intel on the camps that were down on the Darien Gap. So if you guys want to see that, you can go out into Liberty Club and find my channel, All Things S2, and you can see that. It's a very long, it's not a very long one, but it's pretty comprehensive in the stuff that's in that video. The situation is and was bad. And Mayorkas was responsible for all of it.
Yeah. I mean, what he did was downright traitorous. I just can't see how anybody could support that administration at all.
I put the map out also that draws the lines between the NGOs, between paramilitary companies that were involved in the transport. They were running about 200 buses a day out of the Darien Gap. And I drew the lines between DHS, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, the NGOs, the paramilitary organizations, and I found all of the grants that were attached to the money that they were paid to do this.
Wow. So here's S2's channel on Liberty Club, by the way, and the content from Michael Yon that he's discussing. This will blow your mind. Michael Yon has published a video he made in the Darien Gap using a drone. This video was previously confidential and constitutes absolute proof that there is a cabal, the UN, and our intelligence apparatus is in on it. So, like S2 said, go to libertyclub.net, sign up for a free account, and then just click the channels option right here in this top menu bar, and either do a search on S2 or just scroll down the page a little bit and you'll find his channel. And by the way, we appreciate you putting all this information on Liberty Club S2. Thank you. All right. Last part for chapter 2 before we move into the funny, zany, haha stuff in chapter 3. I've mentioned GDP numbers frequently the past few weeks, and I've got some emails from people saying, could we see, what it looks like nominal? There's another thing that they have, GDP, PPP, something. It's essentially based on how much you could buy in a country based on the per capita GDP, like what's your buying power. And it's a bullshit way of looking at things because it basically makes China and other communist countries look good, when in reality, nominal numbers like this are what count. So these are the projections 2025, and this is several different agencies that reported, and they kind of mash it together. So 30.34 trillion. I've heard plenty of people that are a lot smarter than I am say it's going to be over 31 trillion. Then you have China predicted to be 19.5 trillion. But again, those same people who are smarter than I am are saying they will struggle to get to 16 or 17 trillion. And if they publish something like 19.5 trillion at the end of the year, it'll be a lie. It'll be a lie from the CCP. And then, as I mentioned, it falls off a cliff after that to a little under 5 trillion in Germany. So at the end of the day, we've brought this up in a bunch of different contexts, but the most important context for this is that we have the largest, most sophisticated economy in the world. I personally think we're going to be putting a spread between us and China during Trump's tenure, second tenure. And we have an opportunity to do things different than the way we've been doing them and different than other countries. It's a privilege for a company to have a presence in America and to sell directly to Americans. So again, people's unjustified fear over tariffs, for example, the tariff are a means to an end. It's a stick that basically says, hey, if you don't want your BMWs to be facing big tariffs coming from Germany to the US, build them here in the US, and they build some in your state, S2, and they'll probably continue to ramp that up. So not only do they escape the tariffs, but Trump is going to go after about a 15% corporate tax rate, which will put us on par with Ireland. And because of that, him forcing countries to pay for the privilege of coming into our economy, which, by the way, they all charge us insane tariffs for our stuff that goes to their countries. The imbalances are absolutely egregious.
But at the end worst.
But we have a great opportunity here to go back to the way things were in the mid to late 1800s and through to Woodrow Wilson, the first globalist cabal in the president's office, or appointee to the president's office in 1913, to basically go back to a situation where we make money off of tariffs, we make money off of companies, bringing their manufacturing here to the U.S. And Trump is hell-bent determined that he's going to eliminate the IRS, and he's going to fire up the External Revenue Service that'll pay for all government programs, which of course is in concert with all the DOGE initiatives. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, S2, before we move on. It's your call.
The main thing I would like to see is the restriction on creation of NGOs. And then when you have the NGOs, to make sure that any grants they are given align with what they say their mission is. Because one of the things that we've uncovered with a lot of this stuff, and I did this months before Doge ever even came online, where I went out, I started looking into some of these NGOs, particularly the ones that were getting money from the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, where we had 4 NGOs that received $50 million each. And when you go out, you start looking at the money trail and where it's going. It was going out to sub NGOs for supposed climate initiatives, and none of them had anything to do with climate, anything in their mission statement or in their literature on their websites. It was all about DEI and discrimination and just all of the stuff that we've been saying all along is what's been going on.
Yeah, just a bunch of bullshit, really, at the end of the day. All right, that is the end of chapter 2. We're going to move into chapter 3 here in a second after we play a short message from one of our sponsors, Sawyer Products.
The Sawyer Mini is the most versatile personal filtration system available. It's a perfect solution for backpacking, hiking, hunting, fishing, scouting, international travel, and emergency preparedness. At a mere 2 ounces, the Mini fits in the palm of your hand and can filter up to 100,000 gallons of water from any freshwater lake, river, or stream. The Sawyer Mini has a 0.1 micron absolute pore size. It was tested to 10 million parts of bacteria and 1 million parts of protozoa without a single breakthrough. This is the highest level filters can be tested to, so we're confident these are the highest rates of filtration available.
All right, so before we watch this first video kicking off chapter 3, do us a favor and please mash the like button and consider sharing our videos to your socials as well. We appreciate it.
And I have a shout out to Lynn and Sarah Carroll. Thank you both. We do try hard to get you the information that we think you need to know about.
Cool. All right. So having been the victim of a vicious rumor that 50% of their funding comes from big pharma, the FDA decided to set the record straight. It's actually only 47%. 40% of the FDA's funding comes from big pharma. But the story that it was 50% was just fake news. So it doesn't matter because it's only 47%.
Does anyone want to talk about the fact that the FDA gets 47% of its funding from the pharmaceutical industry? 47%. And they only released this information because there was a rumor that 50% of their funding came from the pharmaceutical industry. So they came out and said, no, actually, it's only 47%. So think about that. The people that you're supposed to be making rules and regulations for are the same people that are paying you money. Seems like a conflict of interest, no?
Yeah.
So I've been having a few.
Yeah. Unbelievable. All right. Moving on to the next one.
What was with the dog?
I have no idea. Teen track runner who bashed opponent's head with baton, charged with assault and battery. So the Virginia teenage track runner who struck an opponent in the head with a baton during a race last week has been charged with assault and battery.
Good.
Yeah. This is crazy. And this kid did this whole recreation of the event with her family members and said that her baton got stuck under the other runner's arm. And when she pulled it away, she stumbled forward but she didn't hit her on the head, and she didn't mean to hit her on the head. And anyway, anybody who hasn't seen this, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that she was lying through her teeth. I mean, that's
tried to hit her more than once.
It's so blatant, right? So here she is speaking to this with the fake tears and a different angle.
Everybody has feelings. So you're physically hurt, but you're not thinking of my mental, right? They're going off of one angle. A couple times hitting her, my baton got stuck behind her back like this, and it rolled up her back. I lost my balance, and when I pumped my arms again, she got hit. I know my intentions, and I would never hit somebody on purpose. They're assuming my character, calling me ghetto, racist slurs, death threats, all of this just because of a 9-second video.
Just because of a 9-second video.
Fuck around, find out.
Yeah, there you have. Well, speaking of that, liberals are siding with the cartels now over the United States and asking the cartels to target Trump 27 seconds. Look at the eyes. It's always the fucking eyes.
And the forehead. They have
the
high
eyes,
foreheads.
The eyes and the ginormous forehead. They remind me of Kazoo from the Flintstones.
This message tell, we didn't ask for this. We don't want any problems with you. Honestly, I was a big fan of your products in my 20s, okay? I had a lot of fun. But might I suggest breaking the rules, get high on your own supply, and the man you're looking for lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. Maybe pay him a little visit.
So if you whisper like this, by the way, the FBI can't hear you. Just so you know.
I commented on that when I said, well, at least she knows how to use Google Maps.
Oh my God. Mommy, why won't politicians demand the release of the full Epstein client list? Because they're all clients, my dear. True story there. Oh, and here's another insane one here. So shock video, trans man pulls gun on street preacher saying men can't be women. All right.
Harder, but you need to try less being like somebody you're not and start to humble yourself and be somebody that God made you to be. He didn't make a man to be a woman. He made the man to be a man. He didn't make the woman to be a man. He made the woman to be a woman. And this is the truth. What are you going to do? Come attack me now? I should. Hey, man, it's up to you. If you want to pull that on me, well, God bless you. So you just threatened me with a gun. You just pulled a gun on my face. Man, Lord have mercy on you. This means that you don't even know who you are. Nope, I still love you. Even though you pulled a gun on me, I still love you. I still bless.
Wow.
I love you after I put you on the ground.
Yeah. All right. You want to hate on me because I eat it up. Unhinged leftists screech at Tom Homan at New York State Capitol. Borders are nonchalantly walks by eating his apple. There's his apple in his hand there, by the way. These people are, I mean, just unhinged.
He's just laughing.
So this guy right here is either a candidate for their state legislature or he is in the state legislature, but he goes on the attack here. And so
he's the candidate for mayor.
Okay. And this guy over here, this black guy, loses his shit too. Wait till you see, I know you've seen this too, but I'm saying to the audience, wait till you see like the veins popping out of people's heads. Even this girl here, she's just like putting every ounce of energy she's got into this.
I don't think the hold me back bro thing is somebody he wants to try that with Homan. No.
Yeah. Friggin' crazy, huh? Absolutely nuts. All right. Here's an interesting deal here. Every child killed in a mass school shooting in the last 2 years was killed by a transgender shooter. And it's an epidemic, right? So these are mentally ill people that are no longer being treated as mentally ill. As a matter of fact, they're telling us we have to participate in their psychopathy. And they are mentally ill. They're violently mentally ill. Nothing else to add to that. All right. Egg prices dropping. Jackass covered in egg in his face. No kidding. All right. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick breaks down is beyond my wildest dreams of what I voted for. Trump's plan to lower taxes and the debt is incredible. This is a must watch.
But it sounds like you're saying, trust us. And are you worried that at some point Americans are going to feel like there's a bunch of billionaires in Washington who are playing Russian roulette with our retirement?
$2 trillion deficits don't bother you at all. How could you ask me while we're running a $2 trillion deficit and not care? You're destroying the people who have run this country before, are destroying the future for my children and my children's children. I can't have a 50, 75. We have a $36 trillion deficit. And we used to run deficits of 400 billion. Now 2 trillion, everybody's like, who cares? I tell you what, who cares? Donald Trump cares. And when we balance the budget, you know what that means? That means our deficits stop. Interest rates come smashing down. His goal is to have external revenue. You know, the way I think about it, we all are so used to paying taxes. We're so used to it. We have like Stockholm syndrome. You know, don't stop the Internal Revenue Service, God forbid. How about this? The rest of the world leans on our economy, breathes off our economy. Not only is our economy $29 trillion GDP, but we consume $20 trillion a year. We are the buyer of everybody's stuff. We buy everybody's stuff. So who's more important? The people who sell stuff or the people who buy stuff? So we are the buyer of everybody's commodities, products, goods and services. Everything comes from us, right? Let them pay a membership fee. We all understand that model. Let them pay. How about we, you and I, and every single person we know pay less? How about no tax on tips? How about no tax on overtime? How about no Social Security? How about all those things? These are the kind of thoughts that will change America. I know what his goal is. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year. That's his goal.
It was interesting because she's like another Margaret Brenner, always like a liberal attack dog or whatever, and they have no comebacks to this stuff.
He owned her.
Absolutely. All right, this is some insanity here. Actually, no, it's the next one after this. This is a good message.
The Crew 10 is scheduled to launch tonight. It's a joint effort between NASA and SpaceX. You know, President Trump said to Elon Musk, get the astronauts home and do it now. And they're responding. And they're bringing NASA astronauts, which also happen to be retired U.S. Navy Captain Butch Wilmore and retired U.S. Navy Captain Suni Williams, home. Now, the Department of Defense is also proud to have multiple branches and 2 active duty U.S. military officers represented in the mission that's kicking off tonight between NASA and SpaceX. You got U.S. Army Colonel Ann McClain and U.S. Air Force Major Nicole Ayers. So this is Army, Air Force, and Navy tonight. I just want to take a brief moment to say that we are praying for you. We wish you Godspeed, and we look forward to welcoming you all home soon.
Right on. Finally, the adults are really in charge now.
Yeah, they delayed the flight yesterday. Yeah. Did they get it back on track today? Because I didn't hear anything more about it.
10 days, I think, is the delay. So 9 more to go. Those astronauts up there have been there for, many months. Yeah.
9 months.
It's a long time. All right. So Cat Turd, laugh out loud, thus proving Big Mike being popular and liked is all manufactured BS. And this is what we started with earlier tonight. You know, the money that was funneled through USAID and other bullshit money laundering schemes made the left to appear way larger than life, way larger than what they are. And the reality is that ain't the case. So Michelle Obama might be forced to turn comments off her new podcast episode after being brutally trolled with remarks alluding to her being a man on YouTube on the launch episode of her new podcast, IMO, in my opinion, with her brother, Craig Robinson. And he's like very, very feminine looking.
See somebody of note with a platform who, you know, by every measure looks successful.
So she's a person of note who by every measure looks successful.
The first question is how? I think this podcast, first and foremost, gives
Joan
us
Rivers
an
was
opportunity
right.
to hear from folks.
Thank
you know,
you, Craig
we're going to
and
be
Mike.
taking, you know, questions from listeners who are going through some things and just
Brother
need a
to
little
brother.
advice.
Just two dudes.
They want to hear from people in conversations, and folks are looking for a place where they can just they can hear stories. You know, I mean, what I realized.
Nobody wants to hear your stories, Big Mike, and nobody wants your advice on anything.
You know what they're doing. You know what they're doing with this. Gavin Newsom's doing the same thing.
Yeah,
they're taking the Trump strategy.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. All right, John Lefebvre. I spent 2 hours with Dan Crenshaw. To keep it simple, he hates Donald Trump, hates him to the core. He said it point blank. If you support Trump, MAGA, Maha, America First, the Republican Party, know this. Dan Crenshaw is your enemy, and you should never vote for him again. The fact that he's also a charlatan, huckster, bully, blowhard, pseudo policy intellectual, and sanctimonious cocksucker is coincidental.
Well, I'd say that says it all.
It doesn't ever. Tom Homan was the perfect choice for border czar, pardon me. You're running around arresting the same guy 5 times. Arrest them once, give them to us, and you don't have to arrest them anymore. That's good.
Do you think local law enforcement has the resources to both cooperate with ICE and also conduct public safety for America?
He's if you can't hear because the volume's not great for the reporter, he's saying, do you think law enforcement has enough resources to arrest these people and do community enforcement and everything? And Tom Homan turns it right back on them.
Americans that are committing crimes?
Yes.
Why?
Because they want public safety threats out of their community too, and they're willing to work with feds to make that happen. Every time I go in New York City, I don't think I've ever seen an NYPD officer didn't come shake my hand and thank me what we're doing. They want to help. These officers, they don't get paid a lot of money, but they want to protect their community, and they know someone's here illegally, and they can help not only remove them from community, remove them from the country, make the community safer. They're all in. And I don't think it takes a lot of, rather than arresting the same guy 5 times, arrest him once, give him us. You don't arrest him anymore. I think it's going to relieve a lot of officers.
Look at these guys smiling.
And again, I'm not asking the immigration officers. I'm talking about let us in your jail to arrest a bad guy in the jail. That way the PD's not dealing with him anymore when he goes out and recommits. So I think let's put it this way. I've never met a law enforcement officer that came to me and says he does not support the removal of criminal aliens. It makes our community safer, and that's what they're all about. That's why they wear that badge. That's why they took that oath.
What a brilliant way of turning the ignorant reporter around. So do you think these cities have enough resources for the cops to, grab all these illegals and do community safety and everything? And Tom Homan, yeah, well, you don't have to arrest them 5 times anymore. Just give them to us. It'll free up resources. It was a brilliant answer.
Yep.
All right, Nick Sorator, breaking a federal judge has blocked President Trump from revoking the security clearance of Perkins Coie, the law firm which helped develop the Russia hoax. What the fuck? These activist judges have to go. How can a judge force the president to give someone a security clearance? And how the fucking these idiots force Trump to hire people back that have been fired and laid off? I mean, this is a major bone of contention right now. And I'm sure Trump is burning the midnight oil, coming up with strategies against this beyond just saying to them, okay, well, if you're going to, issue a temporary restraining order and we get the next level to overthrow it, you have to pay the financial costs of that decision on your part, which was an interesting way of tackling it. But there's got to be a better way to do this. There has to be a better way.
There is, and he already knows what it is. He has a pattern of behavior that I don't think a lot of people recognize. So he's been doing this for the last 8 years, or actually the last 4 years he's been doing this. He's basically letting all of these judges go out there and expose themselves because he knows now that there are people like me and many others like me that will go out there and we will dig into these judges and we will find out what they're all about and where they're getting paid. And that's what he's doing right now, is he is putting them out front and center in the spotlight and putting them under a microscope. And then when he's done with them, he will get rid of all of them.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that's the way
that's what he does.
Yeah. All right. I will give anyone $1 million if they can demonstrate they have the strength to hold the dead weight of a human body with their fingertips. Just like that. Just staged make believe.
What is that? What is that of?
It's supposed to be a dead body, someone who died of bird flu.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere in China. But this is realistic. I mean, this girl here can hold up the dead weight with just her fingertips.
Looks just like a Stay Puft marshmallow too.
Yep. All right. So this is one of Michelle Obama's podcasts. This was the one from yesterday. I'm not obviously not going to play a 53-minute video. What I am going to do is I'm going to play the first couple minutes just so you can see how incredibly boring this is. And not to mention all the big Mike comments are funny down below.
A lot of people have questions they want to know, especially when they see somebody of note with a platform who, you know, by every measure successful. The first question is how? I think this podcast, first and foremost, gives us an opportunity to hear from folks. You know, we're going to be taking, you know, questions from listeners who are going through some things and just need a little advice. They want to hear from people in conversations, and folks are looking.
All right, hold on. I'm going to play a little bit more of a quick audience poll. If you think only a moron would ask Mike Obama, Michelle Obama for guidance, put a 1 in the chat. Only morons would ask him for advice. And if you think that it would be perfectly fine for people to get advice from her, put a 2. So 1 for the retards, 2 for the non-retards.
For a place where they can just they can hear stories, you know? I mean, what I realize is, like, by sharing some of these stories, you know, it always taps into something from somebody else. People,
gag reflex.
They want to hear some honest kind of conversation about how people are working it through. And we don't have all the answers, you know? I mean, this show isn't about us being experts at anything other.
Bullshit. She says, me. It is so self-centered. I watched, I don't know.
And people want to hear people of note.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who are successful by every measure.
The first question that I would ask if I wanted to call in and ask for advice is, do you have a dick?
Right on. Here's the other thing. They have spent millions of dollars promoting this gong show.
Than the lives that we've lived. But what we do have are a lot of opinions.
Hence the name.
In my opinion, IMO. This episode is brought to you by Rivian and Pine Sol.
Well, I'm Craig Robinson, and you all know my sister, Michelle Obama, and we're doing this podcast together, and it's really exciting to be working with you on this project.
You know, some people react like, you're doing a podcast with your brother?
Why would you do that?
I know, really. But our dynamic is so, in my view, unique. I think there are plenty of siblings who...
Yeah, that's enough. All right, but point made. What a bunch of just drivel. All right. So breaking news, Michelle Obama might be forced to turn comments off her new podcast episode after being brutally trolled with remarks alluding to her being a man on YouTube on the launch episode of her new podcast, IMO, with her brother Craig Robinson. Nearly all of the comments are jabs at the former First Lady, who has amassed 14,000 views in 15 hours with a multi-million-dollar marketing push when you consider the platforms that mentioned her show. Some of the comments, just two down-to-earth brothers chopping it up. Shout out Big Mike. When two black men are talking, I sit down and listen. What's up, dudes? All right. Joan Rivers, man. Joan Rivers nailed it. Government non-essential employees should not come to work. Elon Musk. Okay. Mission accomplished. All right. So here's the one I was alluding to earlier. Insanity. What the fuck, indeed. A federal judge has just ordered Pete Hegseth to retract a post about disqualifying transgender troops from service. This same Biden judge, Anna Reyes, also said the idea of two sexes is not biologically correct. This is a blatant lie. How the hell is this activist still considered a judge? What the fuck is going on?
Well, aside from that, it's Trump's executive order policy saying that there is only two genders. So there.
Indeed. So from the Retard Finder, retard buys a Tesla so he can destroy it to protest Elon.
Armed with a pickaxe and sledgehammer in Seattle's Soto neighborhood, these two fellas went to town on this Tesla. The car was left in shambles with shattered windows, massive punctures, and tons of anti-Elon Musk graffiti.
We don't like what Elon Musk is doing.
This man would only give me his first name. Greg, sorry. But says he actually owns the white Model S.
I bought it just to destroy it.
And Greg says he coordinated the stunt with his friends because he doesn't like Musk.
Tesla supports trans.
Bought it to destroy it? Yeah.
So what kind of an idiot goes out there and spends $30,000 on a car just to freaking destroy it because he doesn't like Elon Musk? Doesn't he understand he's not hurting Elon?
I'm pretty sure that's their entry level, which is $35,000 plus whatever the taxes are in Washington State. So you probably spent over $40K on it, be my guess. Just insanity for sure.
And he probably bought it on credit.
Can you imagine? Yeah, maybe. All right. So you want to talk insanity. So we've been saying since the beginning of Survival Dispatch News, it's important to pay attention to what's going on in other Western nations. It's a harbinger of things to come here. So memes could be illegal in Texas. So there's a bill before the Texas legislature. It probably won't pass, but they will keep trying it over and over and over again. And this comes from one of our loyal audience members, Semper Paratus. And so this one's from him, and then the next one's from Velcro, and then we're into memes, and we'll get wrapped up here. So this is pretty crazy BS.
Posting a political meme could soon land you in jail. That's if State Representative Dade Phelan gets his way. House Bill 366 would make it a crime to distribute political memes or altered media without a government-approved disclaimer. Violators could face up to a year in jail. The Texas Ethics Commission would have the authority to determine the specific format, font, size, and color of the required disclaimer. Critics say that the bill is an unconstitutional assault on free speech. Fort Worth attorney Tony McDonald, who specializes in First Amendment litigation, blasted the measure, saying it's amazing that this ridiculous bill is the top priority of the Texas House's most powerful committee. The bill is obviously unconstitutional. It would criminalize protected speech on the basis of its content. Notably, the legislation could have sweeping implications beyond political advertising. Additionally, the bill leaves questions about enforcement and selective prosecution.
But it's exactly what the Europeans, especially Great Britain and Russia,
Whatever happened to any law that is repugnant to the Constitution is null and void?
Right. Great question. All right. This last video is from our good friend Velcro. And the lady who posted it says, "This video made my day. Enjoy it." The one dog's name is Sig. This dog could jump like no tomorrow, by the way. That was funny. Appreciate that very much, Velcro. Good job. All right, we got a handful of memes before we wrap up here. So here's Disney looking at a well-established franchise with some gay shit. A million people are whining about Doge telling on them, yet not a single one of them has accused Doge of lying.
There is that.
And there's a Donald Trump, 36 years old, Zelensky, 36 years old, in that freaking gay video of his. How could they all just comply? We would never do that. They must have been brainwashed, right? And show us where Trump hurt your feelings. Right there in my vagina. Studies confirm that these chips implanted in a pedophile's head reduce the possibility of them harming another child by 100%. Have you seen them missing 15 million Biden voters? Yeah, there you go. How many times have we brought that topic up? Border crossings down 93%. Gas prices hit a 4-year low. Eggs down $1.80 per dozen. Job growth 93%. Private inflation down to 1.8%. Media just snoring. All right. So like I said, I only had a handful of memes for tonight. So homework. The industrial censorship complex isn't a formally defined entity, but it's often shorthand for the collaboration between governments, tech giants, and media to control narratives, suppress dissent, or limit free expression online. For the average person looking to push back against this, assuming it's about regaining agency over information flow, here's what's practical for you to do. So number one, diversify information sources. And good places to do that would be right here in Survival Dispatch News and Liberty Club. So what to do? Stop relying solely on mainstream platforms like X, Google, or big news outlets. Dig into primary sources, court documents, press releases, raw data on government sites, or platforms like Liberty Club, where people still post unfiltered thoughts, even if you have to sift through some noise. Why it works. Cuts through curated feeds. You're less dependent on algorithmic gatekeepers deciding what you see. Number two, support decentralized tech and freedom of speech. What to do? User-fund platforms on decentralized principles. Think Mastodon, Nostr, or blockchain-based systems like Odyssey for video. Even small donations or just being active there helps. Why it works. These systems are harder to censor because no single entity owns the keys. It's a slow burn, but it builds alternatives. Number three, amplify the unheard on Liberty Club. And again, if I have an option to put another platform in there beside Liberty Club, I will, but nobody out there has the 100% censorship-free platform that Todd Callender had us build. So what to do? Share suppressed voices or content yourself, whether it's a post on X, a blog, or even printing designs. If you spot something getting buried, say a shadow banned X post, screenshot it and spread it elsewhere. Why it works. Floods the system with redundancy. Censorship thrives on bottlenecks. If info spreads peer-to-peer, it's tougher to choke. Number four, learn the tools of evasion. What to do? Get comfortable with VPNs, Tor, or encrypted messaging like simple. Nothing fancy, just basic privacy tech to dodge surveillance or bans. Why it works. It keeps you in the game if they can't track or block you easily and stay a step ahead. Number five, call it out publicly on platforms like X and Liberty Club. What to do when you see censorship like an X account getting nuked or a story vanishing? Say something. Tag the culprits, post evidence, make noise, keep it factual, not unhinged. Why it works. Visibility matters. Enough people spotlighting the same thing can force accountability, or at least embarrass the censors into backing off. And the last one, number 6, build offline networks. What to do? Talk to people in real life, neighbors, friends, local groups, share what you know, organize meetups, swap ideas without screens. Why it works: digital control doesn't touch meat space yet. It's slower but untouchable by algorithms. Reality check: you're not toppling a monolithic entity here. The average person's leverage is small. Tech companies, regulators have deep pockets and deeper code, but this isn't about winning overnight. It's about chipping away. Focus on what's in your reach, your own habits, your circle, your tools. Over time, collective small acts stack up. S2, can you think anything homework-wise that our audience can do in light of the censorship industrial complex?
Well, you sure don't leave a guy much to talk about.
I put a lot of hours into each day's sit rep.
Well, I'll speak to what's in my wheelhouse here, learning the tools of evasion. Getting comfortable with VPNs is not bad, but you need to understand what tools you're using and look up the history of those companies that created, or those organizations that created those tools, because a lot of them are all more than happy just to give your data away to whoever asks for it.
Yeah.
So I'll use VPNs, for instance. Um, there are some of the more well-known VPNs that have been pushed out there across networks and things, where they say they have no logging, but they're willing to push the data that they do collect on you over to whoever asks for it. So I'll give a little uh, jab here for one that I use. I use Mulvad. And I
Okay.
use Mulvad because they have a history of no logging and telling the feds to go pound sand. So, it's like one of the reasons why I got off of Telegram was, that was another encrypted messaging thing, but a lot of
Yes.
people didn't understand that was only, the encryption was only person to person.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the channels that was encrypted. So when the whole rumor was going around that they were compromised, or their servers had been compromised, I kind of took that as there's something getting ready to happen. And sure enough, something did happen that compromised that privacy anymore. So, like I said, learn about the tools, get comfortable using the tools, but understand who makes them and what they can do with them.
Yeah, good point. Good point indeed. Actually, got a piece of breaking news here. I got to pull this up and show this. Track and field runner accidentally trips, punches, attacks rival with a sword. Accidental, of course. All right. Patreon.com/survival dispatch, $9.99 a month to sign up for an insider account. You get our daily sit rep with links to everything you see on each episode. So if you only have time to watch part of the podcast, you have our essentially daily newspaper with all the articles. You also get some restricted content as well that's not allowed on YouTube and other platforms without getting strikes. You also get an invite to our Signal channel. A massive amount of intel sharing happens on there. And we didn't anticipate it that way, but that's the way it turned out. And we're very thankful for that. There's other stuff you get with an insider membership, but those are the two big things. S2, do you have the conflicted question?
Yes, I do, but I have one thing I need to put out there.
You're right.
Integrity means all is asking what I just mentioned. That's Mulvad, MULVAD. It's not free. It does cost, but it is a very reasonable cost per year.
Right on.
And you can pay anonymously using crypto.
Oh, cool. Good stuff.
Okay, so here we go. Hypothetical situation. Imagine you're walking home late at night in a suburban neighborhood that's usually quiet. A power outage has darkened the streets, and you notice two suspicious individuals lingering near an alley ahead. As you get closer, they step out, one brandishing a knife and demanding your wallet, while the other one blocks your path. There's no one else around, and your phone battery died in the evening. The situation escalates quickly as they grow more aggressive, leaving you with few options to escape or defend yourself. Question: in a sudden robbery or assault scenario where I'm caught off guard without a phone or help nearby, what's the most practical self-defense tool or strategy I can carry daily to de-escalate or protect myself long enough to get away safely?
Yeah, so in this type of scenario, I'm going to pull my wallet out and accidentally drop it on the ground. And when they go for the wallet, they're going to get high-speed lead poisoning. And that's that.
So there's a couple of different things. So for one, most of the people that know me personally know that I'm usually armed 10 ways to Sunday. And it's not with very overt things either. So one of the things that I have always promoted has been carrying a big bolt on a piece of cording, because that does a couple of things for you. Number one, it gives you two weapons actually in one. It gives you a flexible weapon and it gives you a hard weapon. Also, this is a weapon that you can carry anywhere. Nobody's going to give you a hassle about it because it's a piece of jewelry. So you can just put it around your neck. It also gives you cordage if you need to tie somebody up or get somebody strung up or whatever. So that's one area that I would look at. The other piece of it is your phone. Your phone can be used as a weapon. It can be used as a bashing tool. And especially with some of these phones that are coming out with titanium cases now, they're pretty hard. They're meant to take bangs because stupid people drop phones all the time and they mess them up. And that's the reason why they were doing this. So you can take and hold that thing in your hand and you can really bash the crap out of somebody with that.
Sure
Or
can.
you could just flip it at their face and turn around and run the other way. If they've got a knife is not something that you really want to tangle with unless you absolutely have to. It is the most unpredictable weapon in the world.
You're better off getting shot than getting stabbed multiple times.
Yes, because if you're within distance, of them to use a blade on you, you are going to get cut and stabbed.
100%. Even Dave Kemp, SWAT team guy, partners with John Wheaton, has said multiple times he's seen the results of it, and he said, "I'll take a gunshot over a knifing any day, any day." We've got another piece of breaking news, serious breaking news here. A plane caught on fire in Denver not too long ago. This was just posted 9/11, 10 minutes ago. This was posted. We'll have a quick look at this video before we wrap up this episode. So it looks like everybody got off. There's some other angles.
Well, it doesn't look like we're flying out today, Val.
Don't laugh too hard. It might impact everyone.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
They must have caught that Muslim lady smoking on the plane again.
Maybe not.
I would hazard to guess.
Good.
I would hazard to guess it's probably a Boeing. They seem to be the ones that have more problems than anybody else. But anyway. Okay, we will be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Actually, tomorrow night's Friday night. I think it'll be just John tomorrow night. I'm tied up with some other stuff. I will tell you that we're this close to securing Derek Maltz to come back on. He's the head of the DEA now. We had him on the past for the Border 911 stuff. And he's going to present the young lad, DJ, what would you call it, ceremonial honor of being a DEA agent. And we're hoping that General Flynn will be able to join us as well to congratulate DJ. And then Derek Maltz and the General will move on. And we're going to have an in-depth conversation with DJ and his father. And I'm being told that the information his father is going to share with regards to how terrible the Democrats have been treating DJ, the young lad with cancer, 13 years old, that it's going to be shocking. So I will actually have confirmation by 10 a.m. Saturday morning. And if the DEA brass is going to let Derek come back on SDN, and if he does, then again, we'll have him, hopefully General Flynn, bestow this honorary officer position on DJ, and then we'll find out what the left has really been doing. So stay tuned on that, but that's it. We got a great video tonight, by the way, called Freedom. And we'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Between now and then, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America.
Hoorah.
We're going to have a country that's unified. We're going to bring everybody together. We want it all back.